You know that feeling when the floor just drops out from under you? One minute you're floating, convinced you've got it all figured out. The perfect relationship, the ride or die best friend, the life you'd meticulously painted in your daydreams. The next, you're free falling into a nightmare, gasping for air as everything you believed in shatters into a million razor sharp pieces. That was me, a little over a year ago. My boyfriend, the man I thought I'd marry, didn't just cheat. He cheated with her. My best friend, my sister in all but blood, the person who held all my secrets. Classic, right? A betrayal so cliche it almost felt like a badly written soap opera. I craved revenge. I prayed for karma. I imagined all sorts of dramatic, satisfying comeuppances for them. But karma, as I learned, has a funny way of working. It doesn't always deliver the neat, tidy justice you see in movies. Sometimes its plans are far more intricate, far more unsettling, and what unfolded was so twisted, so unexpected, that even now I'm left staring at the wreckage, wondering if what happened was justice or something else entirely. So buckle up, because this isn't just a story about a cheating boyfriend and a backstabbing friend. This is a story about how the universe decided to write its own ending, one that left me questioning everything. Let me paint you a picture of what I lost, so you understand the depth of the crater they left behind. Lucas wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my person. We met in college, a whirlwind of late-night study sessions fueled by cheap coffee and shared dreams. He had this way of looking at me, like I was the only person in the room, a look that could melt away any anxiety, any self-doubt. He remembered the little things, my irrational fear of ladybugs, my love for burnt toast, the way I hummed off key when I was concentrating. We built a world together, brick by brick, with whispered promises of forever, plans for a little house with a slightly overgrown garden, and maybe a dog, a scruffy terrier we'd name Barnaby. He was kind, or so I thought, funny, intelligent, and devastatingly handsome in that rugged, unassuming way. Our families loved each other. Our friends called us the old married couple in the most endearing way. For 5 years, he was my rock, my safe harbor. And then there was Maya. My Maya. We'd been inseparable since kindergarten when she shared her glitter crayons with me after I'd lost mine. From scraped knees and first crushes to navigating the terrifying minefield of high school and the chaotic freedom of our early 20s, Maya was my constant. She knew my soul, the dark corners, and the sunlit patches. I trusted her implicitly more than I trusted almost anyone. She was vibrant, fearless, the kind of person who could light up a room with her laughter. She was the one I ran to when Lucas and I had our first silly argument. The one who helped me pick out the dress for our anniversary dinner. The one who swore up and down that Lucas was the one for me. The three of us were a unit. Weekend barbecues, movie marathons, impromptu road trips. Lucas would joke that he got a 2-for-1 deal. I'd laugh, oblivious, thinking how lucky I was to have the two most important people in my life not just tolerate each other, but genuinely seem to get along so well. Oh, the bitter irony of that now. The cracks started small, almost imperceptible, like hairline fractures in a precious vase. Lucas became distant. Not overtly, not in a way that would set off immediate alarm bells, but the warmth in his eyes when he looked at me seemed to flicker more often. He started working late, more frequently. Urgent projects. And demanding clients, becoming his go-to excuses. Our conversations, once effortless and flowing, became stilted, punctuated by his distracted scrolling on his phone. When I'd try to talk about it, he'd brush it off, tell me I was being insecure, that he was just stressed, and I, desperate to believe him, to keep our perfect world intact, would swallow my doubts. Maya, too, began to act strangely. She became harder to reach. Her replies to my texts delayed. Our usual weekly girls' nights started getting canceled last minute. A headache, a family commitment, an early start the next day. When we did meet, she seemed edgy, almost evasive. She'd ask a lot about Lucas and me, but in a way that felt less like genuine interest and more like she was probing for information. I remember one afternoon, we were having coffee, and I was confiding in her about my worries with Lucas. She listened, nodding sympathetically, but her eyes kept darting towards her phone, and she offered hollow reassurances that felt rehearsed. "He's just busy, sweetie," she'd said, patting my hand, her touch feeling oddly cold. "Guys are like that. Don't overthink it." The universe, or maybe just my subconscious, started screaming at me. I found a receipt for a dinner I knew nothing about, a fancy restaurant he'd sworn he was too swamped to take me to. He claimed it was a business dinner, but the unease grew, coiling in my stomach like a venomous snake. Then, there were the hushed phone calls he'd take in the other room, the way he'd angle his laptop screen away from me if I walked by. The actual discovery wasn't a dramatic movie-style confrontation. It was far more mundane and, somehow, far more soul-crushing. I came home early from work one Tuesday feeling unwell. Our apartment was quiet. I called out for Lucas, thinking he might be napping. No response. I walked into our bedroom, and there it was. Not them, caught in the act, thank God for small mercies. But on the bedside table, next to Lucas's watch and wallet, was Maya's distinctive silver charm bracelet. The one I'd given her for her 21st birthday. The one she never took off. My blood ran cold. It was like the world tilted on its axis. Sounds became distorted, the air thick and unbreathable. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the bracelet, a tiny, innocuous object that represented such a colossal betrayal. Denial tried to claw its way in. Maybe she'd left it here ages ago. Maybe she'd come over to borrow something and forgot it. But I knew, deep in my gut, I knew. I picked it up, the silver cold against my clammy palm, and then I saw them. Tucked slightly under the pillow on her side of the bed, Maya's side, apparently, was a strand of her fiery red hair. Lucas was a brunette. I was a brunette. Maya was the only redhead we knew intimately. The pain was physical. A searing agony that ripped through my chest, making it hard to breathe. I sank to the floor, the bracelet clutched in my hand, and I just broke. Sobs racked my body. Ugly, guttural sounds of a heart tearing apart. How long had this been going on? Under my nose? In my home? In my bed? The two people I loved and trusted most in the world. When Lucas came home later that evening, whistling, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai place as if nothing was wrong, I was a ghost of myself. I was sitting on the sofa, the charm bracelet on the coffee table in front of me. He saw it, saw my face, and the color drained from his. The whistling died in his throat. "Emma, he started, his voice hoarse. "Don't," I whispered, my voice raw. "Just, how could you?" There was no real defense. He stammered. He tried to make excuses. He talked about being confused, about it just happening. The usual pathetic lines. And then he said the words that twisted the knife further. It was Maya. As if saying her name would somehow make it better. Or, perhaps, share the blame. Confronting Maya was even worse. I called her, my voice trembling with a rage I didn't know I possessed. She didn't even try to deny it. There was a chilling calmness in her voice as she admitted everything. "It just happened, Emma," she said, echoing Lucas's pathetic excuse. "We didn't mean to hurt you." Didn't mean to hurt me? They had systematically dismantled my entire world, detonated a bomb in the heart of my life, and they didn't mean to hurt me? The callousness was astounding. The fallout was brutal. I kicked Lucas out, of course. Packed his bags myself, tears streaming down my face as I handled his clothes, each item a reminder of a life that was now a lie. Losing him was agony, but losing Maya, that was a different kind of devastation. It was the loss of a sister, a confidant, a part of my own history. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from someone I'd shared my soul with. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain, anger, and an overwhelming sense of desolation. I felt like a walking wound. Friends rallied around me, offering support, but there was always that elephant in the room. Some knew Maya too, and it created an awkward divide. The gossip was inevitable, whispers following me, sympathetic glances that felt more like pity. I changed my number. I blocked them on everything. I cried myself to sleep most nights, and woke up with a hollow ache that seemed to permeate every cell of my being. I threw myself into work, into therapy, into anything that would numb the pain. Slowly, very slowly, I started to piece myself back together. I learned to live with the ghosts of Lucas and Maya, the memories now tainted, poisoned by their deceit. I started to imagine a new future for myself, one that didn't include them. About 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine, because even when you try to cut people out, information has a way of seeping through, that Lucas and Maya were still together. They'd moved in together almost immediately. A part of me, the part that still throbbed with raw pain, felt a twisted sort of satisfaction. Good, I thought. Let them have each other. Let them build their relationship on the ashes of mine. It's doomed to fail. I pictured them miserable, haunted by their guilt, their relationship constantly shadowed by the way it began. That, I thought, would be their karma, a slow, agonizing decay of whatever they thought they had. And for a while, it seemed like my bitter prediction might be coming true. I heard whispers of arguments, of Lucas being unhappy, of Maya being possessive and jealous. Ironic, wasn't it? A friend of a friend mentioned seeing Maya out alone one night, looking stressed and tearful. A tiny, vindictive part of me felt a flicker of something like pleasure. There it is, I'd think. Karma's starting to work its magic. But that wasn't the real karma. That was just the appetizer. The main course, the one the universe had been cooking up, was far more complex, far more bizarre. It started about a year after the breakup. I was in a much better place. I'd moved to a new apartment in a different part of town. I had a new group of friends. I was even tentatively starting to date again. Lucas and Maya were a scar, still tender at times, but no longer an open wound. Then I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Emma, a hesitant voice said. It took me a moment to place it. It was Lucas's mother, Carol. We'd been close, and I'd always liked her. Carol? Hi, is everything okay? Her voice was strained. Emma, dear. It's Lucas. Something's happened. My heart lurched. Despite everything, a sliver of concern, a relic of our past, flickered within me. What is it? Is he all right? He's in the hospital, she said, her voice breaking. He and Maya, they were involved in something. The police are calling it a domestic dispute gone very wrong. A domestic dispute? Lucas and Maya? They argued, sure, I'd heard that. But this sounded serious. Carol explained, through sobs, that they'd had a massive fight. Neighbors had called the police after hearing screaming and crashing sounds. When the police arrived, they found the apartment trashed. Lucas was injured, not life-threateningly, but seriously enough, a deep cut on his arm, a broken rib. And Maya was being held for questioning. Apparently, she had attacked him with a kitchen knife. I was stunned into silence. Maya? Attacking Lucas with a knife? It was so far removed from the Maya I knew, even the Maya who had betrayed me. It sounded like something out of a horror movie. Carol was distraught. She asked if I could come to the hospital. Not for Lucas, necessarily, but for her. She was alone, her husband was out of town, and she was falling apart. I hesitated. Did I really want to step back into that mess? But I remembered Carol's kindness to me over the years. She wasn't to blame for her son's actions. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I got to the hospital, the atmosphere was tense. Carol rushed to me, hugging me tightly, sobbing on my shoulder. Lucas was in a room, looking battered and pale. He saw me and his eyes widened, a mixture of shame and surprise. I just nodded curtly at him. I was there for Carol. But the real shock, the true twist in Karma's plan, wasn't just that Maya had attacked Lucas. It was why. Over the next few days, as the police investigation unfolded and details started to emerge, the full, horrifying picture came into focus. It turned out that Lucas hadn't just fallen for Maya. He had been systematically manipulating her for years, even before our breakup. One of Lucas's colleagues, a woman who had always been friendly with me and had her own suspicions about Lucas's character, contacted me after hearing about the incident. She had information, damning information. Apparently, Lucas had a pattern. He targeted women who were emotionally vulnerable or who had access to resources. Maya, despite her vibrant exterior, had always struggled with self-esteem issues, a fact Lucas knew well from me. She had also recently inherited a significant amount of money from a distant relative, something Lucas had also known. The colleague had emails, messages Lucas had carelessly left on a shared company drive. He'd been playing Maya, feeding her lines about how I didn't understand him, how she was the only one who truly got him. He'd slowly isolated her from her other friends, making himself the center of her universe. He'd encouraged her to invest her inheritance in a business venture of his, a venture that, it turned out, was entirely fictitious. He was bleeding her dry, all while playing the loving boyfriend. The affair hadn't been a spontaneous betrayal fueled by passion. For Lucas, it was a calculated move. I was stable, but perhaps I wasn't as easily manipulated financially. Maya, with her new money and her insecurities, was a more lucrative target. He'd engineered the whole thing, making Maya believe she was the one pursuing him, that their love was some grand, forbidden romance. The night of the fight, Maya had discovered the truth. She'd found bank statements, messages from Lucas to another woman he was already lining up as his next mark. She'd realized he didn't love her, that he'd never loved her, that he'd used her to destroy her friendship with me, then isolated her, and was now in the process of bankrupting her. The betrayal she had inflicted on me was now turned back on her, magnified tenfold, by the very man she had betrayed me for. In a fit of rage and despair, fueled by alcohol and the horrifying realization of how thoroughly she'd been duped, she'd snapped. She'd confronted him, and when he'd laughed in her face, calling her naive, she'd grabbed the knife. Not to kill him, she later told police, but to scare him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain and violation she felt. Lucas, of course, pressed charges. Maya was facing serious jail time. Her family was devastated. Her life, as she knew it, was over. Lucas, on the other hand, played the victim. He was the charming, handsome man who had been brutally attacked by his unstable girlfriend. He conveniently left out the part about the financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation. This was Karma's plan. It wasn't just about them being miserable together. It was about their own deceit and toxicity turning inward and consuming them in the most destructive way possible. Lucas's greed and manipulative nature had pushed Maya to a breaking point. Maya's willingness to betray a friend for a man had led her directly into the hands of a predator who saw her only as a means to an end. I attended one of Maya's pre-trial hearings. Not to gloat. Not anymore. The desire for simple revenge had evaporated, replaced by a cold, complicated knot of emotions. I saw her across the courtroom. She looked broken, a hollow shell of the vibrant girl I once knew. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, and in them I saw not just guilt, but a terrifying abyss of despair and self-loathing. There was no triumph in that moment for me, only a profound, unsettling sadness. Lucas, meanwhile, was already trying to spin the narrative, garnering sympathy. But the information from his colleague, the bank statements Maya's lawyer uncovered, it all started to paint a different picture for those who were willing to look beyond his charming facade. His reputation, at least in circles that mattered, began to crumble. He didn't go to jail, but his world shrank. People knew. And me? Where did this leave me? It was a strange kind of vindication. The people who had hurt me so profoundly had, in essence, destroyed each other. But it wasn't satisfying in the way I'd once imagined. Watching their self-destruction was like watching a slow-motion car crash. It was horrific, and it left me feeling empty. Karma hadn't just punished them, it had revealed their truest, ugliest selves. It showed that their betrayal of me wasn't an isolated incident, but a symptom of much deeper flaws. Lucas was a con artist, wearing the mask of a loving boyfriend. Maya, in her desperation for what she thought was love, had ignored her own moral compass, only to be utterly consumed by the darkness she had embraced. Was justice served? Lucas lost money. Maya's family sued him in civil court and got some of it back, but his reputation was in tatters and his career suffered, and he would forever be marked by the scandal. Maya lost her freedom, her reputation, and years of her life to the legal system and then prison. They both paid a terrible price. But it didn't bring back my 5 years with Lucas. It didn't restore my friendship with Maya. The pain of their original betrayal remained, a scar that would always be there. The justice Karma delivered was messy, brutal, and deeply uncomfortable to witness. It wasn't a clean victory for the wronged party. It was more like a scorched earth policy, leaving devastation in its wake. Sometimes I wonder if there was a different path. If Maya had confessed to me before things escalated. If Lucas had been capable of actual remorse. But those are hypotheticals, ghosts of what might have been. The reality is what unfolded, a chain reaction of deceit, greed, and ultimately, self-destruction. So, when people talk about karma, I nod along, but I have a different understanding of it now. It's not always a clear-cut case of an eye for an eye. Sometimes it's a far more insidious force, a mirror that reflects people's own darkness back at them until it consumes them. And sometimes you're just left standing on the sidelines, watching the inferno, wondering if the ashes left behind represent justice or just a tragic, inevitable consequence of deeply flawed humanity. I'm still not sure I have the answer. What do you think? Did karma get it right, or was this something else entirely?